Okay.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's good now.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. Then we're good.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. How are you? Dr. Irshad, he is our second coordinator with us.
Yeah, I'm fine, sir.
Yeah, actually, we are with us our today's speaker and have already joined.
Yes, great. That's great. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Virtually.
Yes.
Great. So would you have normally done this event in person had the world been different?
Yeah, definitely. We are having a participant from the different regions, different states of our India.
Got it. Well, in some ways, this makes, the fact that everybody's virtual these days makes a lot of things a lot easier to do, It's not quite as good as in person, but you can get more people, right?
So, on behalf of Department of Mechanical Engineering, Sagar Institute of Research and Technology, Bhopal, SAGE Group, I, Dr. Dinesh Kumar Koli, welcome you all in the fourth day of International Faculty Development Program on Innovative and Entrepreneurial Ecosystem in Engineering for post-COVID-19 pandemic. And in our today's talk, we have with us Miss Maggie Nichols, President and CEO, Eureka Ranch, USA. And Miss Maggie will talk on the topic innovation engineering and how to increase speed and decrease with innovation in startups and large multinationals. Now, before welcoming to or giving the brief of our speaker, just I want to share a short video of our SAGE group. In our SAGE group, we are having the 5 institutions at the Bhopal and 2 universities. One university, SAGE University Bhopal and SAGE University Indore. There are around 5,000 students and around 2,000 working professionals. With engineer Sanjeev Agarwal as CMD, with his two daughters as executive directors, Ms. Shivani Agarwal and Ms. Sakshi Agarwal. So, just I would like to first share a short video of our group. Now, in this today's session, I want to give you the brief introduction of our today's speaker, Miss Maggie Nichols. So, Miss Maggie Nichols joined the Eureka Ranch in 1999 after graduating from Miami University's former School of Business. After reading an article about the ranch during an entrepreneurship class, she decided that the Eureka Ranch was the place where she was going to work. Months and dozens of pestering visits later, founder Doug Hall finally accused and Maggie's been part of the ranch ever since. She started as an apprentice in inventor, working on innovation projects alongside Doug Hall and the team. After a short stint working on internet strategy at a large corporate bank, she moved to Oxford, England, where she supported Eureka's European efforts. In 2005, she returned to the US as Vice President of R&D while also continuing to oversee innovation projects. In those years, she helped to pioneer the development of innovation engineering. In 2009, Maggie was named President and Chief Operating Officer, not only leading the team at Eureka Ranch and the Innovation Engineering Institute, but helping C-level executives around the world guide their employees and teams through innovation. She has served as innovation coach and educator to some of the world's largest companies and non-profits, including American Express, Humana, March of Dimes, and P&G. In summer 2018, Maggie was named CEO and President of Eureka Ranch. Maggie is a self-reported introvert, but when it comes to innovation, education, and leadership, you will find her passion makes her talk fast, curiously, and insistently, providing an incredible energy to any event. Maggie is a Miami University, that is OU graduate who is married to her college sweetheart Brian. They live in Cincinnati, OU with their two kids. So this is the brief introduction of our speaker. And now I would like to welcome our speaker for this talk. And I think all the participants will enjoy today's session because today's session is the session on which we are discussing about the innovation and its effects during the pandemic period. So I would like to invite on the stage Miss Maggie Nichols to give his talk delivery. Welcome, ma'am. Please continue your talk.
Oh, great. Yes, thank you very much. It's always funny to hear someone introduce you. It makes you feel like, wow, that doesn't sound like me. That sounds like someone else. I got big shoes to fill. But you are right on your last point there. I do talk quickly when I tend to get excited about a topic, and the topic we're going to talk about today, I get very excited about. So I'm going to try to stay relatively calm as we go through this whole thing. But what I've done for you guys is I've tried to condense way more information than is humanly possible into this short window of time we have together. So I've pulled out 10 lessons that I think are sort of the most important when it comes to this topic. Now, just a couple of disclaimers at the beginning. What this presentation is not about is venture capital or gambling. It's not about those things. However, an interesting fact that we found as we work with a lot of large organizations is a slot machine actually has greater odds of success than an innovation in today's large company. So it doesn't feel like gambling, but in some cases it really is. But what I am going to talk about, which I think will be helpful to everyone, no matter what vantage point you come from, is we're going to talk about how to succeed with innovation from inside one of those big established companies, but also understand how they think, so that whether you're going to sell your startup or you're hoping to have them as a partner, or you want to get a job at a big company, or shoot, you want to just compete against them, it's always good to know what's in their head and how do they think and how do they operate when it comes to innovation. So we're going to start from there. And I'm going to start a little bit back in telling you a little bit about our history, just so that you understand where we come from. So as you mentioned in the at the beginning, our founder, Doug Hall, was actually a chemical engineer, still is. And he started his career at Procter & Gamble. And his time there, he shipped 9 products in 12 months, which, as I understand it, even today, and Cincinnati is the headquarters of P&G, that's still a record in the whole company. But he did it at a fraction of the time, the cost, and the staffing that it usually takes, to the point literally where the finance department did an audit of his team because they couldn't believe how could you get these great results with such little sort of input. And that, what his secret to success was, is the foundation of what our organization is today. So we were founded in 1986, and we worked with some of the biggest and the brightest companies that there are on the globe. And we were often challenged as a think tank. They would come to us to figure out what's the next new thing. And in fact, I got involved because I read an article when I was at university about this crazy place where companies come to basically play and invent ideas, which sounds like not a job, it sounds like a joke, but it was a real thing, you know. And so I jumped in wholeheartedly. And in my first year, just to give you a sense of it, you know, obviously there's 52 weeks in a year, we'd work with 36 different companies to invent ideas. So it was very front lines, very fast, you know, it became a production facility, if you will, and tons of other big companies as we go. And we worked with lots of teams. All this is just to help you understand where we come from. We're going to get to the lessons here in a moment. Lots of teams, lots of ideas. But here's the issue to keep in mind. We found, okay, so people left our facility and our place. They left with these big, bold ideas that they had requested that we help them create. And many of those disruptive ideas did then ship. They took them and they did them. But of 25,000, that was a tiny fraction of the whole, right? We came up with all these ideas, but maybe 1, 2, or 3% actually shipped. A whole lot are on the cutting room floor. So in 2000 or so, we decided to take a step back and go, this is a bigger issue, right? We can keep coming up with ideas and throwing them and hoping that they go somewhere, but realizing companies aren't situated to take big ideas and do something with them. They are somewhat belabored by their own size, their own scope. A number of things were just making it impossible to ship a disruptive idea. So around 2006, we pioneered literally a new field of academic study. We partnered University of Maine here in the States. And now if you look it up, it is a new field study. Just like people could sign up for mechanical engineering, they could sign up for innovation engineering. And it's taught, and it's been through academic peer review. It has virtual and blended classes, all that stuff. So what I'm going to do for you today is, this is 6 college courses worth. I'm going to teach you 10 lessons in an hour. So if I go too fast, I promise to give you the slides at the end and you're recording it, so you can play it on half speed. But I'm going to go quick to make sure you get lots of stuff. And I've set it up here so that I'm going to say something a bit charged to set up each point, and this is my own perspective. So I'm going to give you kind of the things to watch out for and the foibles that I see a lot of large companies do. So a way to increase speed and reduce risk for innovation inside big companies is to avoid the most basic oversight and innovation that we see in large organizations. This is the fundamental, foundational thing that actually is rarely present in a large organization, and you're going to find it silly. But that is not defining what one is. Many times people in large corporations are like, you're asking me for innovation, but does that mean I need to build a Tesla? Does that mean I need to ship something out of space? So what we do in our courses, and what I'm going to give you now, is a way to describe something that's innovative. So rather than saying, hey, I need innovation, what if you put a framing around it that is, I want things that are meaningfully unique, right? Those can be products, services, companies, people, processes, you name it. So meaningful meaning they have purpose, they have real value to whoever the stakeholder is, but they're also not obvious, they're also novel in some way. So having this really helps people understand, okay, now I know it can be anything that I innovate, but being meaningfully unique makes it innovative. So that's one piece of it, but we're called innovation engineering for a reason. We're called innovation engineering because we don't want just the ethereal notion of innovation. We want innovation that shifts, which means we have to make this a science. It can't be objective. The more it can, subjective. The more objective it can be, the better off we are. The more data we use, the better off we are. So there is a way to measure this that's very helpful. So how to make this a science is to ask these two questions of any person that you're inventing an idea for. So whether you're a startup, whether you're a student going for a job, whether you're a professional looking to get an upgrade, say, okay, I have an idea. What's the purchase intent? So ask people on a 0 to 10 scale, what's the likelihood that you would buy this thing? Answer that question. And then ask them, and how new and different on a 0 to 10 scale is this idea? And then what you do is you weight those scores, 60% on the purchase interest, 40% on the new and different. You blend those together, and by golly, you get a pretty good representation of what the market will do in response to that idea. So when an idea is really fresh and new, and you want to kind of rule of thumb, our suggestion is hope for a 5, 6, or 7. If you blend those scores together, aim for a 5, 6, or 7, then you're probably on to something. If you're getting lower than that, you're probably working on something that doesn't matter to anybody. If you're going higher than that, good for you. Keep running. But many ideas, as I said, aren't products and services. So how would you measure them if it wasn't something to buy? A way to do that is rather than ask purchase intent, ask like. How much do you like this idea on a scale of 0 to 10 versus new and different? Those blended together will also get you to a good place. And this is all from actual real data from the marketplace. So we used to own a company called Actipol, a global testing company that would take ideas and look at how they performed in market. And we would do this graph, and it always looks the same no matter how many times we go back to the data and recheck. And this is everything from products and services, business to business, all kinds of things in this graph. So you can see on one side we're measuring purchase interest, on the other side is new and different. So the more new and different you are, you have the ability to be terrible, like Crystal Pepsi. It was very new and different. It didn't have very high purchase interest, which is why you don't see it. It's also an invention. So I'm not blaming anybody except for myself on that one. But sometimes it won't work. But at the other end, you also don't want to not be new and different. If you're not different, you're going to be like flour or any other commodity that has no difference and no margin, right? What you're aiming for, obviously, is that new and different with high purchase interest, things like Swift or whatever it might be. Those things you're really aiming for. So how can you be different but also have high purchase interest? Second one. Another thing that I see happen a lot, and as a watch out, is to avoid the most dangerous bet that a large company can make an innovation early on in the product life cycle. And that is by trying to make a choice too soon. So rather than you bringing your idea to them, imagine being in a large company who has volumes of ideas, portfolio approach to innovation. Right? So often they're being asked of themselves and others, okay, which ones are going to make it? Which one should we invest in? Which one should we back? And sometimes they'll force themselves into decisions without having the idea mature enough to make that evaluation of. Let me give you an example. So we walk the talk, and I'm sure many of you have these kind of thoughts in your head too about how do you incubate an idea, how do you incubate anything, and I know you talked incubation groups before earlier this week. We too incubate ideas. So we have a service that helps big companies still invent big ideas. We have this training and education business that does things like this and teaches classes. And then we have a third incubated business. And we wanted to make that business a real torture test to demonstrate that what we teach actually works, to incubate a whole business behind it. And we wanted to do something that was hard, partly because we wanted to prove that it worked, but partly also because a lot of those large corporations we work with, we can't talk about, obviously, the work that we do with them. So we said it has to be really hard. It has to be an impossible market. It has to be something already a lot of big players we don't have any experience in, and we're not going to put funding behind it. Like the worst scenario possible. So we created a company called Brain Brew out of our garage. This is literally the garage at our headquarters. So we're thinking big because I think Apple started in a garage, IBM. So we think maybe that's a good sign, right? But we had no time and no money. So we weren't going to invest in. But we have ideas because we're idea people, right? So maybe we can help with that. So we had a whole bunch of initial concepts about what kind of, we knew we wanted to do whiskey because we like it. So I'm going to have you mentally vote. I'm going to have you actually vote. I'm going to show you some products that we came up with and see what you think of them. So we had the initial ideas. We didn't know if they were really great or really stupid. And sometimes that's the thing in innovation anyway, right? You're not sure if you're crazy or brilliant. So the first one was Brewski. It was a Cincinnati, we have a craft beer movement, as many places do in Cincinnati. So we thought, hey, what do we have a bourbon that's all about beer? We had Big City whiskey. We had Ripped Apple, so it kind of had that taste of cider. We had Scientific Spirits. And yes, if you think this looks like something you would use to fuel up your gas tank or oil, that is the packaging it's from. That was crazy, but it was meant to be provocative and scientific. Small batch bourbon, and then we found this interesting brand in Kentucky that was of these three gentlemen brothers that actually did this accelerated aging process. We thought, well, if we brought back an old brand. Now, if you meant, I want you to take a second. I'm not going to ask you to vote, but mentally pick which one of those you think is the coolest, which one, purchase interest. Once you have that in your head, I'll share with you the results. Okay, I'm going to assume you've picked. The answer to the winner is they were all terrible. It didn't matter. They all stunk. They all got bad scores. Consumers went, are you kidding me? Get out of here with that. Don't bother. But instead what we did is said, yeah, but you know what, that last one, it kind of gets me to thinking, this idea, this accelerated aging inspired an idea is that and back in the day in Kentucky, they used to have everybody made their own whiskey. So what if we had it so everybody could make their own whiskey? That inspired that idea as stimulus. Well, we fielded the research on that one, and I told you before, 5 is good, 7 would be great. That one got an 8.9 from consumers. They said very new and different, very high purchase interest, has now revolutionized the company. So now they have a custom bourbon blending experience where you actually make your own whiskey. They've invented a bourbon wizard by answering questions on your taste palette. They'll actually custom make per bottle your bottle of whiskey, and people go home with their own signature bottle of whiskey. So you just see how the evolution happens. But if you'd asked early on which idea is the right one from a corporation, you would have made the wrong decision. You wouldn't have let it incubate enough to make a business out of it. So the issue is don't make a call too soon. Another one, the easiest way to shut down innovation that you want to avoid that we see happen all too often is making the no, that's not a good idea, personal. So here's what we see happen a lot in big companies especially. There's one way I told you to know if you have a really unique idea is that measure purchase interest and new and different. But the other way to know if you have a really cool idea is if it scares you. And there's lots of things that scare people in big companies because they're built on predictability, reliability, a number of things. So doing something different truly creates anxiety. So we have some choices, right? You can say, okay, well, if I have a unique idea, by definition, that's going to have risk, I can choose to not do it, just scrap the idea altogether. I can choose to compromise. So I could have made that cool one, but I have to make it this way because that would be easier to manufacture or whatever. Or I could say, no, I'm going to flip my brain around and I'm going to say, rather than no to the idea or the person, I'm going to say, no, that idea has critical threats. And I'm going to problem solve those critical threats. And what that really does is respect the emotional nature of the person offering the idea up, right? It's not, Maggie, your idea is bad. It's, Maggie, okay, I see some critical threats. I don't know how we could make that. I don't know how we could afford that. I don't know how we could sell that. When we go from that personal attack to now thinking more objectively about how can we problem solve these issues and learn and adapt as we go, it starts to cultivate an innovative thinker as opposed to innovative idea all the time. So what we really want to do in a large corporation is not necessarily think about the innovations so much as nurturing the innovators, because maybe that idea is not good, but they might have 2, 3, or 4 more in their head still incubating. And if we shut them down on this idea, they're probably going to be too scared to bring forward those others. So we want to keep that spirit alive in the company. Another one, avoid the worst way to benchmark innovation. We see this happen a ton. And that is a lot of large organizations will assume the rest of the world will stay steady. So one of the biggest competitors, if you have like a startup or an idea you're trying to sell to a large organization, is what they'll often do is compare you to what else they have in their portfolio, so they don't do cannibalization, or they'll just assume that this is the market we're dealing with and how does your thing play within that market space. But the wrong assumption is that the market space isn't incredibly dynamic and changing all the time. I mean, ask any number of companies that had a short-sighted view that the market wasn't going to change when it was. And obviously in the world of COVID, we know the market will change for unforeseen forces, let alone competition. The other interesting thing that large companies often struggle with is realizing that innovation, not only is it not steady state, it's moving faster than they can imagine, way faster than they can imagine, and frankly, way faster than they can handle with. So it goes much slower inside a large corporation than it should. And this just demonstrates that. This is the product adoption curve back in 1900s for things like the telephone and the car. It took a while. Now, the moment the tablet was introduced, almost worldwide adoption, just like that, and obviously more things to come. The other interesting thing about that, this is a bit nuanced though, is to recognize, and this is helpful to you, again, no matter large company outlook or small company, that there will be a saddle somewhere in there, right? So a lot of people think about the product adoption curve that it goes like this, but there is typically one of these like little saddles where you might get a lot of innovators at the beginning that are really interested in the product or service, but there will be a little bit of a lag before the big takeoff, where you really have to do a little bit of adaptation to your product or service. Next one. Another way to increase speed and reduce risk is to be conscious of where big companies lose the most money in innovation. Where they lose the most money in innovation is one of the places you might not expect, and that is in the development phase, not in the upfront speccing, not in the spend on the IP or whatever it might be, but in the and not because of capital expenditures in development. So here's what we see happen a lot, and this one actually is taken from a white paper that was done on MIT tech transfer. So the assumption for a lot of people is, for the big company, hey, if we just have the right big idea, we'll put it in our normal development system, we'll ship it. That's how it works. The reality is, this was, again, the paper from MIT where they looked at tech transfer within MIT. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, right? So let's pretend we're a company. We walk up to MIT's front door and we knock and say, do you have any really cool technologies I can buy? And MIT says, well, yes, we do. Here you go. They're patented. They're ready to go. They're amazing. And the company says, great, here's some money, or here's the deal. We're going to work out together, whatever. So they've acquired it in some way. They take that back to their average system for development, and there was an 80% failure rate, meaning, I'm not saying in market, 80% did not even ship, even though they'd gone through and acquired the technology from MIT. So that means, boy, oh boy, what happened in that development system to make that amazing idea not even get across the finish line. And it's not uncommon for that to be the bad spot. In fact, Accenture says 72% of companies allow innovations to languish because there's not even a formalized process for what to do with an innovation, especially if it's really different. And so that's assuming that they even could ship. For the companies that do have a process for innovation, we did this research a couple of years ago with some large multinationals where we talked to their chief technology officers, their heads of R&D, and we did an informal audit. We said, okay, let's assume that the value of a project when it goes to development is X. What happens as it goes through the development process? And they said typically it loses about half of its value because you have to make it manufacturable. There's lots of things about it that you just whittle away and compromise, and they lose about half their value. But that doesn't have to be the case. So as we work with large companies, and we not only teach innovation engineering, we actually companies instill it and use it as a work process. We could see that, you know what, with a more PDSA focused, like you learn in school, approach to innovation in the development system, you can actually not just not lose half, but gain, because you make the idea better, as opposed to the rigid waterfall thinking of, oh, I just took this idea and I have to ship it, I have to execute. If you treat development of an innovative idea as more cycles of experimentation and learning, you can make better. I know this is a crazy slide, but this is what we teach in our classes. It's this whole methodology for innovation. But the idea is, how do we reduce risk before making big investments? That's the lesson. All right, the next one, leverage the most overlooked energy source in a large corporation. We see this a lot too, where we just look right past it as an opportunity. And that overlooked asset is the intrinsic motivation of all employees. This is just phenomenal, or just kind of mind-blowing to me. So I did a talk late last year, and we did this assessment before the talk. There were about 800 people that took this very arduous 52-question assessment, and it was all mid-level managers and below large multinationals. And we asked these two questions, among many others. Do you personally believe, basically, is innovation important and urgent to you in your career? And their answer was, they came in at the 35th percentile or 25th. I can't remember what it was, but it was low. And I was there to talk about innovation, so it was very awkward, to say the least, because they basically said, we're not interested in this, and it doesn't matter, because I'm just rank and file in a big company, so who cares? So there's that mindset going inside a big company. And yet, on the other side, CEOs across the board, these are tons of studies that all say CEOs think we don't have innovation capabilities inside our organization, and that's a big deal, and we need it. I mean, World Economic Forum says in a couple years, over half the people will require upskilling in innovation, because that, as you guys are like-minded, that is the skill that matters almost most, I would argue most. So there's clearly a disconnect, though, in large companies. Employees feel like innovation isn't relevant to them, and executives are going, we need it more than ever. So the opportunity in a company is to translate with clarity why innovation matters and why it's relevant. Now, the construct that we like to use, and over again, misalignment of priorities and not being aligned on those priorities is one of the things that slows innovation down the most, because everybody's doing a million things as opposed to just focusing on what are we innovating on. So a simple construct for that was taken from a premise called commander's intent, but essentially being really clear about what is it that we're going to innovate on. And this is sometimes a miss inside organizations. So what's the narrative? Why are we innovating in this space? What's the mission? What do we hope to innovate, right? What is we want to create? And also, what are the exclusions and constraints that are off the table for us? Saying that, coming to a consensus on that from leadership really helps team then innovate solutions, because I'm sure you've all been in some way or another in one of those loops where you have an idea, you bring it to someone, they go, no, not quite it, because they haven't created the parameters or in their own mind about what the thing is. And then also looking at exploration areas. Another one, the short-sighted thing that a lot of large companies will sometimes do is they'll also assume that their staff just aren't creative enough. And I mentioned before that the staff might not think that innovation is relevant to them, but sometimes, as that last report showed, executives think, yeah, but I didn't hire these people to be creative, so they're not creative. And we absolutely disagree with that. We are the Deming philosophy people. It's systems, it's not people. Have we taught them how? I did this talk that last week, and I asked the question, what evidence of value does your organization's innovation training provide? This was a number of people that were in the training space. And most of them said, what do you mean innovation training? As in, we don't even have it. Don't talk to me about measuring its value. We don't even offer it, right? So how can we expect employees inside a company to think innovatively if we already assume that we don't have a system for it and we aren't teaching people how to think that way? But we can't also villainize companies for not doing it because it's hard to do and they don't know about it. I'm not sure if this audio will play, so shake your head if it does. But this is an audio or a video of Dr. Deming as he was interviewed in the 1980s talking about, well, you'll see. Yeah. 10 times. He said, how could they know? How could they know? And it's the same thing now. Most folks aren't taught what you're being taught in school. So here's a simple way to teach people how to innovate. This is our MBA on innovation in one slide. So in order to create meaningfully unique ideas, you can use this equation. Stimulus raised to the power of diversity of thinking, minimized by fear. That's it. That's how you innovate and continue innovating as you go forward. So let me break this down into pieces. Stimulus can be the thing that gets you greater rewards than you even imagine, right? So you can take simple things like, oh, what if we put a couch with a bed and it creates a sofa bed? Or you can take things, sometimes a radio and a toaster. Not all of them work. The first one worked, the second one is screwy. But the idea is the stimulus helps set up a chain reaction of thinking in your brain. So, we have lots of neurons in our head. Stress kills those neurons, age kills those neurons, but what we're really we're really interested in innovation is just lighting up the connections of all of them. Because what we know, and this is the work of Dr. De Bono, is our brain as a human really wants to do pattern recognition all the time, right? I have a problem, I need a solution. What's the fastest way to make that happen? That's very efficient, but it's not very good for original thinking, right? What's more helpful is, yes, your brain's on this pattern of problem solution, but with stimulus, it can shake up that thought pattern and lead you to a new solution. So the question is not what's the answer that we always do, but what stimulus can I find that might make me think differently? And that can help you get to a non-linear result. Some examples. We used military equipment as we got inspiration to help Nike create their first outdoor shoe back in the day that was more cross-terrain versus a running shoe. When we helped American Express invent their Centurion card, we actually looked at high-end service of Ritz-Carlton and others. When we looked at our own education systems, we looked at flipped classroom and PDSA and formative assessment to help us figure out how we're going to teach online when we've never done that before and make it better than classroom. Our whiskey company actually used the pulp and paper manufacturing process, reverse sous vide, and molecular gastronomy to inspire their new method for creating whiskey on a regular basis. And I'll tell you about that here in a second. So stimulus can really help. Diversity, I'm not going to cover that topic because I feel like it's somewhat obvious. The more diverse thinking you have, the better. So don't get a whole bunch of people who think like you together to solve a problem. Get people who don't think like you. People from other departments, people from other functions, that will help. And then to minimize fear, you can do things like what I talked about earlier, right? Rather than saying no to the idea, call something a critical threat. How are we going to problem solve that critical threat? So things like that. Another one for thinking about speed and reducing risk in a big company, and that is if you think your innovation and speed to market for a large company are fast, double it, you'll still be too slow. Big companies, even when they pat themselves on the back for being quick, they are not enabled or systems set up to encourage and reward or support that level of speed. Let me give you another example from the whiskey company, right? So as I said, we wanted to make something really hard. So this is our invention team, the Brain Brew crew that started the whiskey company. You can see their credentials below them. None of them say they know how to make bourbon or whiskey or have had anything to do with that, right? So our collective experience in making whiskey, zero. But they also didn't have any of the constraints that come with coming from that industry, right? They were brazen and very open to doing things completely differently because they had no base knowledge otherwise. What they did instead, though, is they were really, really fast at doing cycles of experimentation. So this is a picture of our front bar. That's 72 different bottles of product that they did in 7-day cycles. They actually learned, just a little inside, you guys will probably appreciate this, rather than mostly when you make whiskey, whether it's Scotch or whether it's bourbon, whatever it is, you typically make it, then you put it in a wooden barrel, then you put it in a rick house on a shelf, and you wait for the seasons to allow the liquid to go in and out of the wood to make it more delicious, and usually the longer it sits up there and the more that goes in and out of the wood, the more delicious it gets. That's the traditional way to make it. But what our team did, you saw the stimulus, is they put it under pressure. So we mock the seasons, we fake the seasons under pressure so that we can do that in and out of the wood. We put the wood in the whiskey versus the whiskey in the wood. And in fact, that picture of the garage that I showed you now has 7 chemical reactors inside of it that make whiskey. But what that means is that we can make whiskey in 40 minutes. The industry standard is 3 years, and that's fast. Imagine how much faster we can make decisions about product development, we can make decisions on marketing, we can get to market, we can satisfy customer demand because we can build it, make it that fast. You just run circles. You don't have to be smart if you can be that fast, because it will tell you the answer when you apply PDSA. But what they've done is they said, well, speed is our answer, then we're going to make sure that we're just super fast on everything. So here's a graph that just shows the traditional whiskey company takes this long to do stuff, and these are the critical tasks that they have. The Brain Brew crew takes that much less. So they're literally doing 98% faster on, so it's not that they're brilliant, it's that they can go faster. So how does this work in a big company? That's a small one. In a big company, an example of this would be an inverse work prioritization system. In a big company, what often happens is somebody sees a new innovation or a new idea or a new project, and they go, great, what are the tasks that we need to do to make that a reality? And they make their task list. And then maybe they'll assign a project manager, let's say, and have a team. The problem with that is sometimes they'll work on the small stuff because they can, because those are easy things to do. And yet there's this big critical issue right in front of them. What we want them to do is instead start with a critical issue and see if you can overcome that versus wasting your time on the little stuff that in the end you're going to kill the idea anyway if you can't overcome the big thing. So flip the thinking so that you aren't overworked. And this is not going to be anything foreign to you. You know this really well. The business community has not embraced this like the engineering community has and many others, right? It's plan, do, study. So we adopt the study, not the check from Deming's work. But, you know, scientific method, right? You know this works. The question isn't if it works. The question is how many cycles is it going to take you to figure it out, right? How many times do you need to go around? In a big company, this can be a lot because this doing PDSA cycles is another way to combat fear. So this is Lori. She worked for a big company. They're resellers of fish, and they wanted to go into a new market because they weren't a value-added part of that equation. They literally just kind of took the fish that they got from their fishermen and sold it direct and didn't do anything to it. So they were going to change their business model, a number of different things. So she had big critical threats. They were going after millennials.
Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Fine.
They said millennials won't like it. They said, so she did a whole bunch of cycles with millennials. They said, oh, you know what, we can't make it goof proof because millennials told us the reason they don't buy frozen fish is because they mess it up. They don't get it right, you know, because fish can be gross if you overcook it or undercook it. So she did lots of cycles on how can I make it goof proof. In the end, she did 98 cycles in 9 months, but they came up with a cool product called Can't Mess It Up. You'll find this in Canada, actually. It uses reverse sous vide technology, if you're familiar with sous vide. So basically, you bring a pot of water to a boil. You take the fish, which has been vacuum packed in a certain way. You put it and you turn the water off, and then you put the lid on, and in 10 minutes, the reverse, conduction or the reverse heat goes into the fish and makes perfect fish every time, which reduces failure in the home because you don't have to worry somebody's going to cook it wrong or the oven is set too high. Water boils pretty much at the same temperature everywhere. So the Canadian Goose Group, plus she has, I think, 4 patents in the process of the manufacturability. So a number of things, right? But it all came from her constantly learning, pivoting, changing, and using PDFA. Another one for you. Avoid the most wasteful use of resources that we see in large organization. And you can see a theme I keep coming back to. But one of the most wasteful uses of resources is actually leaving innovation only in the hands of the innovation function or new product development, or sometimes it lives in R&D, wherever that is. If you localize and just say, you are the only people that are supposed to innovate in this company, you lose out on a ton of talent and incredible thinking. As Dr. Deming said, 94% of the failures are due to the system, 6% are due to the worker. Every organization has tons of people that can add value. And innovation is frankly too important to be left to that one department. So these dots are meant to represent, people inside a company. And so often we only do a tiny portion of people working on the real breakthrough thinking. But that doesn't mean that all the rest of the people aren't supposed to do breakthrough thinking in their own way, in their own function, in finance, in operations, in answering the phone, in cleaning the bathrooms. There's lots of innovative solutions that can be applied everywhere. So rather than just a handful being those infected with innovation people, we should all have innovators throughout. And imagine how much better you collaborate with others if you are not the only ones innovating, but everybody is. You all start to go, okay, I get it. I see where you're going. So what we would argue is, if any of us had to compete for our job tomorrow, or students are going to go look for work, they could say, yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer, hire me. Or they could say, yes, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I also know how to create, communicate, and commercialize big ideas because I'm an innovator. We would argue that those innovation skills are the new life skills of the future. Like, there is no way forward. And the good news is, employers are looking for those things, as you guys well know, right? This is just one report from the Association of American Colleges and Universities saying this is what they're looking for, are these skills that lead people to do more innovation. And so innovation could be anything, right? It could be a way to service customers for a business, or a course, an artificial intelligence course that improves itself as you're teaching, or there's a ton of different things that people can apply it to. I don't know that they always connect the dots that requires innovative thinking. And then my last suggestion for you, or the last thing that I would have, my 10th point, how to increase speed and reduce risk for innovation as established companies, I would give everyone a t-shirt. And the t-shirt would have on the front of it the equation. Meaningful, unique ideas come from stimulus and diversity. But on the back is the real sentiment, which says the same thing, just in words, and that is, I don't know, I need help, and I fail a lot. If everybody can say those phrases with authenticity, I think we will have just a whole heap ton of innovators all over the place that they can own and really, admit to that. And I always have free stuff after I give a talk, by the way. So I do have a couple free things. One is, so if you like this topic, we just published a book on innovation engineering called Driving Eureka. And there's a 1-hour abridged audio that you can get of it. So if I talked too fast, or if you're better at listening to it like that way, then you're welcome to go to that website and get it. And then we also have a syllabus for our course on innovation that we teach at universities. And we are definitely open and looking for more universities to partner with to offer the innovation engineering curriculum. So with that, the end, and any questions or comments?
Yeah, it's a very nice, and it is an outstanding session. You have made the discussion, and I think all the people are focusing on just listening, because if we are sometime missing, we cannot get. So we have got a lot of discussion that starting from the innovation, etc. Just from the participants, please ask your question. Just you have to unmute yourself and ask your question, please. Anyone who wants to ask question, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
It was so evident, so clear. As a teacher,
Yeah.
no questions can be a good thing. We got it all taken care of, huh?
Okay. I think in chat box also we are not getting any question. Then can I ask you one question? What is innovator's dilemma? What is
What's
innovator's
the innovation? What's the
Dilemma.
innovation dilemma?
dilemma? Yeah, yeah.
I think the biggest dilemma, so I'm going to get very, I'm just going to answer that. I'm not going to preamble it. I think the innovation dilemma is assuming that the answers for innovation only lie at the top of the organization. I think that's the dilemma. And I don't think that organizations yet realize that that's an issue. I think it's a sleeper of an issue and a topic. So what we see here a lot in the States, more in the States probably than others, and in fact, the World Economic Forum actually says that the States more have this issue than others, but it's present everywhere, is this notion that the rank and file, the people closest to the work, are there to execute a task, and that's what they've been hired for. And the people further up the chain are the ones that are responsible for thinking and moving things forward. And there are just so many pieces of evidence and studies and just real world stuff that shows the opposite. There was this great Coca-Cola piece that they did. If you're looking for recommended reading, there's this great book called Ideas Are Free. Same author wrote The Idea-Driven Economy, and he did a profile of many, but one was he followed this project that Coca-Cola had, and I think it was over in Europe, and Coca-Cola was looking for ideas for just efficiency. How can we make our product more efficiently? And they put it out to a fancy group of consultants to come in and answer the question, and then they also put it out to frontline staff. And of course, frontline staff, I can't remember what the numbers were, but it was ridiculous. Like 75% of the improvement ideas came from frontline staff. And that, yes, is that process improvement? Sure, but it's just a tiny window into the fact that people that are there all the time have incredible ideas. There's rarely a system for what to do with them, and there's rarely a system that doesn't involve, I have an idea, I have to give it to somebody else, and then they'll run with it, as opposed to, no, you have, again, intrinsic motivation, the passion, I'm going to give you a mechanism and teach you how. That gets greater resolve and results than anything. In fact, there's another example I'll give you real quickly. We were working with a person or a company that makes helmets, like protective helmets. And the head of engineering said, I don't understand what's going on. I have this huge budget that my executives have given to me that I'm allowed to give to my engineers to come up with new ideas and to back what they have. And nobody's knocking on my door and asking for the funding. I just don't understand. Why don't they want the money? And he said, but what really kills me is I go to their house and I see their motorbike or their car, and it's so tricked out, it's so cool. Like, I know they have creative capacity to build really cool stuff, but they're not bringing that creative thinking to work. And he's like, why is that? And the simple answer, after you get there, is they didn't have a system and they didn't know what to do inside of work to take an idea and move it forward. There was no system in place. There was no training in place. At home, they have complete autonomy. They can do what they want. But there was no easy way, even if they asked for the money, to go, yeah, but then what? Then what did I do? So it's a simple miss that people...
Yeah, very nice. Any more questions from audience? Participants? I think we are not having...
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, please,
Hello.
sir, please.
Hello.
Please ask.
Hello.
Yeah, you are audible, sir. Please ask.
Good afternoon. Good evening, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Please ask the question.
Ma'am. After listening your session, it was really wonderful. And what I have learned, if for any industry, for any country, the innovation should be an integral part of that system. So we can say that those industry or those countries are adopting the innovation. They are leading the world. We can say that the most innovative company is Apple, and second I think that Google, and they are leading the world. So we are also want to be the part of that. So is there any suggestion from your side? How can we develop this culture in our institute? Because we have a lot of students, but somewhere somehow we are fail still. We are not able to develop that innovative culture in our organization. So that's why we are somewhere lacking. And US industries are they are far ahead from us. So any kind of suggestion from your side, ma'am, we should adopt, and we will be a part of the present innovation culture.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely have an opinion, and that is what I see sometimes in disconnect, right, when it comes to technology, especially, right, technology or healthcare, things like that, where there's a lot of science that is needed, right? So some of the gaps actually we have in the U.S. a lot in large companies are a lot of our R&D functions have been gotten rid of, and we have a hardy, robust collection of business people in business, but there's an opportunity to have more R&D, more healthcare, more IT, those kinds of things, and that's where you see a couple of those companies really blending is investing in that. The challenge that I think presents itself, which you have an opportunity to rise to, is many times what we see in the technology-laden industry is if you have a technology or an idea that can help another company, is to paint the picture in a business sense as to why that technology is valuable. So we call it's not quite tech transfer, but it's understanding and incubating the idea as a business proposition as opposed to just a new widget, a new science, a new molecule, a new whatever. And so a lot of the times there's opportunity for that higher science, but the miss in bringing it into the large corporations is large corporations are inundated with new ideas all the time. You have to make it so transparent and easy for them to see the business value of investing in that. So like by way of example, if a company was going to go in and pitch to a retailer, or pitch to Apple, or pitch to Amazon, or pitch to Google, it's not just saying, here, I think you should have this, Google, because Google's mission and strategy right now might not align with that. No matter how good an idea it is, Google might be saying it's really cool that you can do that in AI and spatial recognition, but right now we're investing in the human genome and in psychology experiments. You know, it doesn't map to where we're going, right? So that's one piece. But the other piece is, in order to get them interested, is there's two ways to get a company to do something: fear and greed. If you can build that business argument that says, not only is here a cool technology, but here's the pull for it, here's where I've already demonstrated the market wants it, right? Here's that demonstrated. Just a number of things that they're going to be thinking about as they look at the idea. The more easy you can make that, because they're pitched with so much, the higher odds you have to actually get a seat at the table with them.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, any more question? Please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please ask me a question.
Very good morning to you, ma'am. That was a nice presentation. Though it was a bit fast, but I was trying to catch up with it. I had a question that everyone has ideas. Like they have, in a blitz of second, they get hundreds of ideas, right? But many of those ideas don't even see the day of light. Maybe this is what I think, that maybe because there is always a fear of failure. So, what is your opinion on it? And if it is true, then how can we overcome it?
Yeah, failure is built in. It's just a matter of how many times you're going to do it until you get to the right one, because nobody starts off with the right idea. So a couple of mechanisms that we do in our classes intentionally for students to help them with that is we actually, by design, a lot of our courses and curriculum are designed that you fail first, you submit, and you fail in the class. We joke, and we teach professional classes too, so we often joke with those professionals, you're going to fail more in this class than you've ever failed before in your life, and you have to just do more of it to create that callus so that it doesn't hurt so much. So, but there's a couple of reasons why we see that fear in people, but inside organizations too. One of the reasons that there's a lot of fear rightfully behind it, is because a lot of people who stick their neck out, if they're in a company and a culture that doesn't support it, you get in trouble if it's not a company that supports that, right? But the other thing to know is there's ways to model fear without going all the way to the end and failing. So a way to help people think about fear that we found helpful is, what are the small ways that you're going to fail? We call it fail fast, fail cheap, get smart. So you have to do the failure in order to get to the next iteration. So rather than seeing it as the thing that's stopping you, see it as the thing that you're going to have to fail so many times before you get to the win. There's actually a company that we worked with a number of years ago. I loved how their CEO said it. He said he actually, this was so backwards in thinking, he required failure of his product development team. He said, I want to see 10 failures. Now, not that they ship. They fail and they learn and avoid the shipping but he said, I want to see 10 failures this year, because he knew if he patterned that behavior that the right thing would happen in the end. And he was right. They took their product development life cycle. It used to take them 3 years to get to market. He took it from 18 to 18 months, and then to the point where they were shipping about 7 to 10 products per year. And they make products that can hurt people. They make industrial mowers and things that people with big properties, I mean, people can get really hurt. So it's not the kind of thing that you accelerate with any old thing. They have to be safe about it. But he knew asking for that would get him to the right, and he was right. So it's a different mindset to be able to demonstrate it and then to walk through it. Another mechanism that we'll often use, and this is really neat for leaders, again, a hard thing to practice because it's not taught, is when people are working on a project that's really innovative and different, and they're practicing this whole notion of, okay, here's my idea, and then here's those killer issues that I have to deal with. We recommend, okay, if you're working on that project, have at least 3 people on the project team. The one person's the project leader, so they're kind of the CEO of the idea. They're the one whose idea it is, probably. Then a management coach, who's probably a few layers above them in the organization, who sort of sponsors that effort. And then a process coach, somebody who's done innovation a lot and can help them through. But the notion is that no one can stop the project except the project leader. Interestingly, not the boss, the project leader, the person running the project. What the management coach can do is they can identify killer issues on the regular basis. But if the project is to stop, it comes from the person running the project, because they say, hey, you know what, that killer issue, I couldn't overcome it. Sorry about that. GoToMeeting decided to kick me off. I guess it said, I don't like your answer anymore. You're out of here, Nichols.
Yeah,
anyway, I hope we got your answer.
Okay. Any more question from participant now? Okay, I think there is no more question now. Okay, so to summarize this, I think it was a wonderful talk, and all have enjoyed this about the innovation, and we have got about the what is innovation and for when we apply to our organization, how to increase this, and how to develop the system, and how to make grow, as well as the different situations you also discussed, analyze the different problems, and also how to apply in the institutes for the R&D work, etc. So actually it was a very nice and outstanding talk you have made here. Everyone enjoyed, and I would like to say participants, you can connect with the Eureka Ranch, whatever the program they are having, so that everyone can be benefited, because it is very important. Innovation is very important part of the organization, as well as to develop yourself, to get the idea. So actually this is the stream for the growing up. So I will also try to connect all the other my students as well as the faculty members to connect with the Eureka Ranch, and for giving this such type of very important, informative, as well as this outstanding talk. And thank you very much. I have no more words to say, because it was a very, very wonderful talk actually. So just I would like to share the certificate of appreciation for your talk.
Sorry, you broke up there for a second. Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Please, yeah, please accept the certificate of appreciation. I will also email the certificate to you.
Thank you very much. Oh, it was an honor to be with you this evening, this morning, globally. This was wonderful. Thank you very much for your questions, your attendance, and spending your evening.
Yeah. So it was a very wonderful talk, and thank you for joining us. And we will also in the future we will be connect together, and we'll make communication if such type of talks are made, or we are having some need in our organization, our institute, with our R&D people, maybe our colleagues working in the different areas, different departments, etc., with our students also. So with this, thanks to you, ma'am, and thanks to all the participants for this very important and wonderful talk. We have enjoyed this evening, and we are very happy with this talk. But this is the COVID period, so also I would like to say, please be careful and be safe, and also make safe to others, our family members and others also. Thank you so much. Hearty thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Okay, so all the participants, we are going to end up this session. Thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Irshad. How are you, sir? How was the session?
Sir, it was amazing. It was wonderful.
Very nice. So we were working together for this type of talk, and we tried to join more and more people. It's okay, whosoever joined, but it was a wonderful talk, and we have learned a lot how we should do in the innovation, because it is the today's need. So, is it okay, sir? Now we can go for the end of this meeting. And one
Yes.
announcement. The tomorrow's session will be with Dr. Lance C.C. Fung, and it will occur at 2 p.m. tomorrow. So please join it at 2 p.m. And there is also the validity function for 15 minutes after that. And you are also having a feedback form. You have to complete it tomorrow. So with this, bye, and see you tomorrow. We are going to end this meeting. Thank you so much for joining us and listening silently. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.